planet scale, right? So
Ooh.
when you think about this stuff, let's for instance take an example. We're running a website out of Portland, Oregon, and we have users that are spread out all across the globe. Well, what is the impact of that, right? So when you make a request from Europe to Portland, Oregon, that distance is going to have some effect, right, on how much on how what the user experience is, right? Like how is the performance? What is the latency, right? But when you're using something like serverless or you're using Lambda functions, let's talk about specifically AWS. They allow you to do things like Lambda at edge, right? So Lambda at edge means that all around the globe, there's edge locations. And these edge locations can actually cache your Lambda function. And so if somebody makes a request from Europe, it then goes to the Europe edge location and it doesn't travel across the globe to Oregon. And so that's really important to understand because you can both use edge locations for your front end and for your back end. And so with that, you can basically cache your front end code or your website in Europe, and you can also cache the Lambda function backend. And so then all the requests are going straight to Europe, which could be a mile away from your house versus traveling thousands of miles to Oregon, right? And so that difference could be actually like 2 or 3 seconds. And as Josh talked about, you take that 2 or 3 seconds and 90% of the people are walking away. So now with the idea of planet scale, and this can be achieved on Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud and AWS, and I'm sure it can be achieved on IBM as well. But the big thing to understand is that because you're leveraging these fully managed services and you're hooking into something like a CloudFront that's a cache, a global CDN, you can actually achieve extremely performant apps that run for a global audience, and it doesn't actually affect the amount of work that gets put in, right? So just to kind of explain this, when we talk about caching around the world, we talk about using these edge locations. You may think, oh, well, we don't have 100 hours, right?
Yeah.
Well, what if you could do it in 3 hours, right? I think that a lot of times people hear the level of complexity that they think is involved to do this stuff, but actually, what if it was 3 hours to do that, right? The hard part is creating the application code. If you already have the application code, you can hire a company to then take that application code, repackage it into Lambda functions, get that benefit, hook up automation for it, and then make that minor tweak to your application to do something like Lambda at edge. And with that, your application is going to be extremely performant for a global audience. And all it takes is that understanding, that expertise, right? So if you hire somebody that has that expertise, a serverless developer or an agency, it could be Serverless Guru, it could be somebody else. The big thing is that they're going to be able to come in and understand your architecture enough to then transition it to this new state and get that benefit. And so if you compare it to like the other side of the coin, which is, let's say we're running on-premises servers, right? We got a rack of servers in Portland, Oregon that's running our website and running our backend. We get a request from Europe. We don't have racks of servers in Europe. It's going to travel all the way across the globe to get to Oregon to then come into our rack of servers to then give them that feedback. So there's nothing you can do there. Like, I wouldn't say nothing. Obviously, there's always like hacky workarounds that you can do. But the big thing to understand there is that you're not going to be able to just click a couple buttons like you could with serverless and have global reach.
It's less efficient.
Exactly.
It's less efficient.